Hello, and welcome to Wrestling with Poetry, Kalamazoo, Michigan's premier wrestling and poetry podcast. Today, we'll talk about backyard wrestling, and we'll hear from the late great British poet Bob Cobbing. First, I will answer a question that came into the inbox of Wrestling with Poetry at gmail.com. Dearish, I notice you refer to your podcast as the premier podcast about wrestling and poetry. If someone does decide to challenge you and your pod, what will the title match look like? And do you think you'll try to play the heel or the face? I assume in any case you will emerge champion, and I hope to have my chair stolen and used in the match. Best of luck, Josh. If someone decides to challenge my podcast, well, I think my first response would be to see if we could synergize, pool our resources. If they're a poet, they could be on this podcast, Wrestling with Poetry, and I'm a poet too, so it'd be nice for me to be on another podcast. I'd want to be the face, but in wanting to be the face, I think I would probably come off as a heel. And also, if this other poetry and wrestling guy, I'm using guy as a unisexual term, if they were maybe a bad actor and they were just trying to destroy something I'm trying to do to stay in the poetry game, if they were doing that, I think I would have to have a podcast where I was explaining exactly what was happening. That there's an evil person who's trying to run my tiny little thing into the ground, and see if there was any help from out there. A fight. People want to see people fighting. I like wrestling because it's fake. And the real things that happen within a fake context. That interests me, you know. I don't know what to do about psychotic people. This is a great question, because if I ever get successful, this might become an issue. The thing is, they might have come up with the same idea independently. If they came up with the same idea independently, what are we fighting about? Are we fighting about who gets to get the title Wrestling with Poetry, WWP? I don't know. Josh, you've given me a lot to think about. Who would win? I don't believe winning ever happens. I mean, there are heightened moments. You never really know who's out there doing something nearly identical. If there were somebody out there with a similar... Let me reread the question. You refer to your premier podcast about wrestling and poetry. Well, maybe I would have to change that. If someone else does decide to challenge you and your... Why would they do that? But what will the title match look like? Will it come... Like I said, a title match... I'm very good at Istanbul. I will challenge them to a game of Istanbul. What would that look like? What would it look like? Would they reach out to me, or would I have to reach out to them? I don't know. Would I have to reach out to them, or are they reaching out to me? That's kind of important, Josh. Okay, in answer to this question, if somebody challenges this podcast for being the premier, I would say, okay, well, so let's just resort to the simple-minded, literal world. Let's say, okay, premier, what does that mean? It means the first one. Did you start yours before I started mine? Then I will have to say, well, I am not the first Wrestling with Poetry podcast. But I will say Kalamazoo's beloved. Or maybe I could just do a little different thing. I am a poet. I mean, I could just get a thesaurus, change it. You know, I'm not married to any of this. Thank you for your confidence that we would be the greater of the two. I have nothing against anybody who wants to do the exact same thing. Okay, I guess that's it. I've babbled long enough. Now for Bob Cobbing. Bob Cobbing. This is a little different because this guy is British. And where did I find this recording? Why, on Pen Sound. What a fantastic resource for recorded work. Pen Sound. Yes, it's a compendium of all of these recordings. And so what about him? He's 1920 to 2002. He is a British sound, visual, concrete, and performance poet. And the other cool thing about him is that he existed outside of academia. Here is Bob Cobbing. Thank you, Bob Cobbing, wherever you are. The topic of backyard wrestling is going to be very shortened. Basically, backyard wrestling is wrestling in the backyard, and it's for fun. The other thing is never, ever, ever, ever use a trampoline. Famously, Mick Foley began his life as a backyard wrestler. Events this week. Independence Pro Wrestling presents High Stakes at Michiana Championship Ladder Match event. This will be Sunday, November 26th at the Patterson Ice Center, 2550 Patterson Avenue. That's in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Doors open at 5 p.m. The match begins at 6 p.m. General admission is $20. There will be an open mic at Satellite Records this Thursday at 5:30 p.m. That's at 808 South Westnedge Avenue in Kalamazoo, Michigan. It's a free event, and I highly recommend it. Well, thank you, Bob Cobbing. Thank you, Josh, for your excellent question. Anybody with a question? wrestlingwithpoetry@gmail.com.